Welcome to Outrun Lead Nation. This is an army of women all across the country who are dedicated to not only themselves taking on leadership roles, but also helping other women do the same. And we use training and technology at Outrun Lead to accelerate the number of women and to diversify the women who are running for office locally all across the country. All right. And these are all real faces, all beauties that have come through. I think you're in some of these advertisements, Leah. And this is a part of our Run As You Are campaign. As if you've gotten our email, hopefully you've seen that Outrun Lead has embarked on a national tour all across the country, 10 cities, as well as 5 online classes, and this is the first online class. So we're excited for this tour. Run As You Are is exactly what it says. We're interested in you running right now as you are. There's, not a major shift or change that you have to make in your life. It's just about gathering the right resources around you. And we're excited to have some first-timers. I see Carla. Welcome, Carla. All right. A little more about us. We are a training powerhouse. We're the training engine of the women's leadership movement. So if this training sort of whets your appetite, great. We have about 60 more online that you can watch and that you can listen to when you're cleaning your house, driving. You can listen to it as a sort of podcast style with experts just like Leah Webb and elected officials all across the country. We have 2 more in this series. So this is part 1 of a 3-part series, which you'll able to take all 3 or pop in and out of the courses that you want. Today is What Office Should I Run For? On June 30th, it is going to be How to Create Your 2018 Finance Plan. If you think you are running in 2018, especially if you're running for the state legislature, do not miss this. Stephanie Berger is a fantastic trainer, has worked on tons of local elections, presidential elections, and knows exactly and will map for you what needs to go into that finance plan for raising funds and spending money. And then my fave, Faith Winter, is doing Story, Power, and Persuasion on Friday, July 11th. And that one will really help you think through what kind of story you want to tell and how to be persuasive with that story and how to use that story in different audiences to actually garner power. All right. As many of you know, today's clinic is recorded. It takes us a couple days to get it up and edit out all of my rambling and bambling that happens in the beginning. And so that will go up on our website. It will go in the replay section as well as the learn section. And there under the learn section, voterunlead.org/learn, you can find several dozen resources, including another Run As You Are series, talks about the skills you have are perfect for public office. And we have great sessions that are primer sessions called This Is How You Run. They're a little bit longer, and they are panels of women who were just elected in the November election, as well as like an overview of how to run a campaign and what some of the initial steps you need. One of my favorites from a previous session is called the 90-Day Challenge. That's another one to help you accelerate your political capital in the community. All right, so this is me. I'm the founder of Outrun Lead. That's a great headshot. Yes, it's a little touched up. With Outrun Lead, I've trained over 22,000 women to run for public office, and our work has been featured in Oprah Magazine, Marie Claire, on television. We're psyched about the press that we're getting right now because it's actually coming from you all, women who are stepping up and using our resources. So thanks for that. I want to introduce Leah, who is a remarkable human being. In 2008, she was the first and youngest African-American representative to the Binghamton City Council, first in its 200-year history. She has decades of experience as a community organizer. I have a lovely interaction with her in the Capitol down in D.C. where she gave me a quick hug only to tell me she had to run off because she had 3,000 people down at the Capitol to lobby on health care, one of her core issues. You can see her also in a documentary about food access in her community in Binghamton. She's a VRL alum. She's elected official formally that supported equal pay. She set up human rights commissions, a citywide climate action plan, and many other pieces of legislation. And she runs her own firm. She's the principal of Webb Consulting, where she's creating culturally responsive businesses, nonprofits, and she'll help you if you want a little more of Leah. All right. So that's pretty much the end of my rambling. I'm going to turn it over to Leah Webb, and I'm going to get off camera and join you all in the chat. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Hello, everyone out there. I just want to thank Erin and the whole team at Outrun Lead. It's truly been an honor and a pleasure to get to know everyone over the years and be a part of this great family that is growing exponentially, which is very, very exciting and also very necessary considering our climate. But, it is time. It is our time to really make sure that the communities are a part of and the communities we want our children and their children to be a part of, to make sure they have a better quality of life, we can make that happen. So, again, thank you to all of you who have taken time out of your schedules this weekend to be a part of our dialogue this afternoon. So just to kind of take us to the next part of our dialogue, I think it's important that for anything that we do in the variety of roles that we hold as women, as leaders, the many titles that we put on ourselves, everything begins and ends with us. And so running for public office, it's important that you make sure that you are at the center of everything you're doing and that you're staying connected with, I like to call your player, which is yourself. And so it's important that you establish why you are running in the first place, but also walking in your truth and what is your truth and what are the needs that your community has. So, so who are you, right? Why are you running? And that is a critical question that you will find yourself being asked by media, by friends, by folks you haven't even met yet, strangers, and even yourself. You're going to always come back to this question of who are you and why are you running? And one of the ways in which you can begin to answer that is that you have to be clear on what policies are you or issues are you actually passionate about, and whether it stems from your work or experience with education, whether it is looking at clean water access, whether you want to impact the way in which your city budgets money for streets. All of those variety of things, you have to determine what policies or what issues that you're passionate about. There's this great mantra. It actually comes from this book and the study that was done in the UK around trees and bees. And so in this narrative, this book, they talk about this idea of social change and what are those drivers of social change, what makes change happen or not happen. And so they use this metaphor of like trees and bees. And so this idea behind it is that social change depends on alliances between what could be called the bees and the trees. So the bees are those folks in our community, small organizations, individuals, and groups who have those new ideas that are mobile and are quick and able to cross-pollinate. And the trees are the big organizations, government companies, or non-government organizations, which really aren't that great at creativity, but generally good at implementation, which speaks to resilience. And so in thinking about a tree, trees have roots, right? And so they have the ability to scale and make things happen, but both are needed. You need bees and trees. This actually comes from Mulligan, 2006. So again, I just share that with you to kind of help you contextualize your passion. What is it that motivates you to talk to others, to what agitates you, what keeps you up at night with regards to injustices that may be happening or change you want to see. Same thing with resonance. How does what you care about connect with your community, right? So it's not just simply enough that you're passionate about it because you're not an office of one or a person of one. So how do you identify the issues? How does that resonate, your passion, with folks within your community? Also, difference. What distinguishes you from other candidates? So from my own experience, I ran, it was not an open seat when I ran the first time. I actually ran against the then city council president, and who was highly supported by the party. And so you go through this exercise of distinguishing what makes you different from the person you'll either be running against or other candidates who may enter into the race along with the incumbent. The other piece, value. What do you add to the position or to the respective body that you're looking to go into? And so going back to what I said at the beginning, that you are the key ingredient in this whole recipe, so to speak, And so what value are you looking to add to the position? Because the office isn't just enough. It's really important that you're thinking about it in a way that the office is a conduit to which that can address issues in your community that not only you are passionate about, but also others in your community as well. Some other key questions to think about when you're thinking about who are you and why you're running is that this is a fluid opportunity that you will have as a change maker, as a decision maker, to influence people's lives, not just your own. And so part of that leadership comes with great responsibility. And so you have to, my mantra is you have to constantly think and lead with intentionality. And so asking yourself questions like, well, who am I serving? What groups or different areas of my community might not be getting all they need from my leadership, and who might experience unintended disparate outcomes because I haven't taken them into account. So, again, these are very critical questions to ask yourself as far as, thinking about the value that you're going to add to the position, moving and operating with intentionality. So another way to identify how your passion may resonate with others in your community is this idea, and this actually is a basic principle that guides community organizing, and that is, how do you turn your problems into policy? So we provided you some definitions here because, again, part of the way in which you can build a movement with the issues that you're passionate about and bringing others along is that you have to be able to frame what's going on. When folks are saying things like, we don't have access to fresh food, well, why is that? What's going on? How are we talking about the issue? Is it because it's not a priority from a planning standpoint in your city? Is there not enough financial capital? What's going on, right? But we know that there's a problem. Something is wrong and it's causing people pain or creates disparity. So that's where we begin with our passion. So we take our passion and identify what's wrong, what's going on, what's causing disparities. Then we think about what are some solutions, what are the different ways to address the problem or resolve the pain point. Who are those stakeholders in the community that have a level of responsibility but also would have a vested interest in addressing this particular issue? Another way to think about it is that the policy solution selected for the campaign, right? So the problem that you've identified, what are the larger kind of campaign platforms you can build off of that particular issue and the solutions to it. The other piece is goals, so the particular components of the solution that will be achieved. So by creating community gardens in an area that is underserved because of limited access to fresh foods or a food desert, the goal is actually so the issue is food insecurity, and so a solution is creating a community garden or urban farm, and the goal is that we would see a reduction, let's say, by 10% of chronic health issues in this particular community that's having this disparate access to fresh and healthy foods, just as an example. The other piece to consider with goals is that I would also encourage you, as you are forming your campaign platform, that you have folks from the community that you're looking to serve be a part of, I'll call it your inner, cabinet, so to speak. When I ran, I created groups, mini groups. I called them my neighborhood block captains. And so I had a way of ensuring that throughout the campaign, I was able to do a pulse check and stay connected to what was going on in the community, but also bringing folks into the campaign to really have it reflect the community that I'm a part of. So some additional questions that you need to ask yourself: what are the most important problems my community faces? So again, I may be passionate about food insecurity, but perhaps a big challenge is blighted properties, vacant properties, or neighborhood safety, right? So you have to ask yourself that. Also, who are the constituents that are most affected by each issue? And one of the great pieces of advice that I received from Marie Wilson, who is the who founded the White House Project and also brought together Outrun Lead, along with Aaron and all of the other wonderful partners. She gave me some great advice. She said that when you're thinking about the issue you want to change, bring people to the table who have something directly to gain because of this issue, and then those who aren't impacted by the issue but will come to the table because you asked them. And so that is a piece of advice that has stayed with me throughout my entire time on being on city council, but also my time after city council. And it speaks to this idea of being intentional about collaboration. Number 3, what are the root causes of these problems? So what is driving the disparity? Why is it that there's limited access to fresh and healthy foods? Or if we're having issues with blighted properties, what is our zoning with regards to how it's determined what kinds of properties are built in a variety of areas? It could be public transportation. I know that's a big issue in communities across the country. Funding has been cut, limited access, and especially if you're in rural communities, you don't often have public transportation, or it's very limited, so you're often having to rely on private transportation. What are the things that keep these problems from being solved in a real way? I think this is important for anyone to think about. A lot of these challenges that we as leaders are trying to face is often felt or framed in this way that's abstract, meaning these things are just kind of happening without any influence, right? But we're humans, right? And these institutions are made up of human beings. And so I've looked at that as a way to contextualize and make these things that feel abstract be very concrete, is that these are man-made issues, or we make them, right, as people. And so the same way in which we make them and help the systems to function in this way, we can also change it. So think about the ways in which these problems may have been addressed in the past. You know, your passion about this particular issue, have there been previous attempts to address the issue, but what's happened? What were some of the barriers seen and unseen with regards to that particular issue, so that you can assess what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what you are going to offer along with others in your community and those who even worked on it to get the issue solved in a very real way. The other thing I would also offer as advice is that no matter what issue you are passionate about, a lot of the work we're talking about changing in our communities, it's important for us to think of it as a process, not an event. And that is, you're going to have to prepare yourself mentally, physically, all the way around. And think about it as if you were, you know, joining the Olympics, right? You have to train. You have to prepare yourself mentally, physically, all the ways in which you do it, so that you can be prepared to address any barriers that come your way, any opportunities that may come your way, so you can expand upon it as well. So what office best suits me? So what I have found in thinking about, oh, yes, go ahead, Erin.
Hey, I just want to chime in, and before we move into the actual office that we think best suits. So the conversation we're having in the chat is that I might have really big issues. So I care about healthcare, and it feels like this huge, big issue that feels like it's all happening inside at the national level. How do I really tie some of those issues to the local community? And I would love for you to give an example about how you actually brought different players in and helped you to craft your own campaign platform.
Sure. So healthcare is one of my many passions, and so I actually did work around healthcare reform in New York before it became the Affordable Care Act. Some of the things I did as a local legislator is that we passed support resolutions that were sent to our members of Congress, saying that outlining the guiding principles of what affordable health care should look like in our community. So as a legislator, you can pass resolutions that could be sent to the respective decision makers at the state and federal levels. That's one. The other piece in terms of local day-to-day work on healthcare access, so I was a part of a healthcare coalition that was made up of nonprofit organizations, our local health department, residents, and one of the things, and also a healthcare institution themselves, so hospitals. And one of the things that I think is important for any issue is that you have to really assess what is actually going on, what experiences are people having in your community as it relates to that particular issue. So in this case being healthcare. And so part of the way in which I try to engage from assessing what's going on in this community is figuring out what challenges do people have in regards to accessing healthcare. Like, what does that look like locally? So when people are going to the hospital, in our local hospital, we have issues with chronic health conditions that can be prevented, but people don't have access to health care. That's a challenge. And so we launched a whole education campaign around, and it's actually part of the New York State's policy for individuals who have Medicaid and Medicare. They have a Medicaid managed care home program that provides support from family members, from health practitioners to advocates, to serve as kind of like a wraparound service for folks who are apprehensive about going to the doctor and receiving care. So that's one way. We also did a town hall with health practitioners, elected officials, residents, for people to tell their story and talk about what they've been experiencing. We even took it to the Capitol in New York. We talked about it in the city council meetings. Our city council chambers actually hosted testimonials from folks with regards to their experiences with limited health care access. So I would say you can collect stories. I would definitely say reach out to your local health department and other advocacy organizations in your community and see who's around the table. And if there's not a table that's in existence, then you help to create the table to bring people together. That is something I would recommend. We also passed legislation, again, working with our health department. One of the challenges that we saw was that we have a lot of families who come to City Hall, the county building, et cetera. And one of the things we noticed is that there weren't any places for any nursing mothers to actually be able to nurse their children. And so one of the pieces of legislation that we passed in conjunction with our county was that we provided legislation to establish places for mothers to nurse their children within City Hall and in the county building. We created nursing stations. Transportation was another one. We did a memorandum of understanding between the city and the county with regards to transportation access, trying to work out costs, et cetera. So those are just a few things where you have big policy issues that often are found at the federal and state level, but they also start locally and have impact locally.
Perfect.
So, and this is actually a good conversation and thinking about what office best suits me, right? Because if you have your passions resonate on kind of very large scale issues, all politics are local. Let me just insert that there. All politics are local, and so it's important to think about whether the passionate issues that you have, what actual offices has jurisdiction over those particular issues that you're passionate about. So let's segue to this next piece, and that is, so who or what office actually has power and or jurisdiction over your core issues? If you're passionate about education reform, is your city with connection with your school district, is it mayoral control or is it a separate entity with the superintendent, right? Because there are some cities that have the mayor's office actually controls and sets the budget for the school district, or you have other communities that don't have mayoral control school boards and school districts. So if you're passionate about education, should you run to be on the school board where you would have direct jurisdiction over looking at budgets, but also raising questions about curriculum from an elected office standpoint? So what is their current legislative agenda? This is so important because, again, at the beginning when we were talking about how you have to identify issues that resonate within your community, right? So it's important that you understand what you're getting into. What are those legislative items that the respective body you're looking to go into, whether it's a legislative body or an executive branch, what are those items they've been working on? What is the current agenda? What are those top issues that they're working on right now? What laws or ordinances have been passed before, and who decided that, right? So as legislative bodies change and executive leadership changes, one of the things I have found is that there were a lot of laws and ordinances that were extremely antiquated that needed to be updated, but no one was paying attention. Like I remember one of the pieces of legislation that we updated had to deal with something to the extent of, you were allowed to have one or two horse carriages or something of that nature in your area. Things that in a lot of our cities that have multiple modes of transportation, that may not be a huge issue that you would have to legislate for example. What level is most effective for what you care about? Again, and thinking about the level of office you want to go into and matching it with your passion or the issue you want to work on, it's important that you think about the level of office that you think would be the most effective or have the most impact on that issue that you care about. And again, I also will emphasize, and this was my own approach that I used in my role as a legislator. There were those day-to-day operation things, whether it was roads that needed repair, whether it was other code issues, infrastructure issues, neighbor conflict, all those things, that there are ways in which you can also look outside of your community and see what are some best practices that people are doing beyond just your particular level of office. So that's why I emphasize that great ideas aren't just, fixed on one particular level of office. Great ideas can come from a variety of offices, not just the one that you are in or looking to be in. So this diagram speaks to ways in which you have to align issues and policies with elected office. So if you want to have more of an impact, for instance, in this diagram, on transportation access. So I said we did some things locally with regards to the day-to-day access with transportation, but from a larger financial funding standpoint, a lot of those decisions come from the state and federal level. So if you see that if transportation access is one of your issues, then you may want to think about, well, I may want to run for a state office because the state and federal levels actually control the dollars that are allotted towards transportation funding, for an example. If you're passionate about this policy with regards to Common Core standards, right, there are some things that you can do as a school board member with regards to how Common Core gets implemented. But if you want to change or impact that on a much larger scale, then a statewide office or a federal office may be a better fit for you. So this next slide here, these aren't every single level of office. We wanted to give you an idea of when you're thinking about what level of office you want to go into. These are examples of some of the offices that are at the local level. You have town supervisor, you have city council, school board, you have the mayor, county commission, district attorney, county executive, community board. I wanted to spend a moment on that just for a second. Planning commissions, for example, are very powerful on issues around zoning. They help to determine the criteria that sets the stage for business development with regards to the things that they have to abide by in order to establish their business, from like physically establishing their business as an example. So some of these positions, especially commissions and town boards, are critical in those decisions. Is this can y'all hear me? I don't know. Is that better? I feel like I'm being a telephone operator. Anyway, so state level, you have the assembly, you have the Senate, the Attorney General, Governor. Again, all of these offices, you also have the Comptroller. They set the statewide policies as it relates to particular issues: education, healthcare, pay equality. I know there's been a big push here in New York for to raise the minimum wage to $15. The governor has most certainly endorsed that particular effort to raise the minimum wage, but that started at a state level with regards to, which has an impact at the local level. Federal level, you have, House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, the President, Supreme Court. Again, the agencies that provide the funding, like the U.S. Department of Education, the Treasurer, all of those offices are found at the federal level. And so, again, if you are passionate about, for instance, how much dollars are spent on election campaigns, the whole big, Citizens United court case around that, if you want to impact it in a much larger way, then federal level positions may be more in line with what you may want to do.
Leah, can you talk about county seats? I think it's one of those things, like, we know about our school board, we know about our city council, we know, we might know of our state rep and state senator, we may not know who they are, but I think there is a lot of power in looking at the county, and it's something we often overlook. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So in the example I gave earlier with regards to transportation access, so the county is the entity that runs and operates our public transportation system. And so all of the decisions around scheduling, budgeting for it resides with the county. Also, when you look at it from another standpoint, just from a taxing standpoint, the county controls how much municipalities get in regards to sales from income tax funds that go towards your budget. Those are just a couple examples where the county has the wielding power with regards to financial implications. So whether it's taxes, whether it is transportation access, the county controls that level of decision making. And so what I've seen is that folks who have run for county positions, because there's not as much attention on it, you have folks in those positions who, may not be as passionate or, don't look as deep into some of those antiquated ordinances that I mentioned a little while ago that need to be updated. But the county is a critical partner to anything you do at the city level, whether you're on city council or if you're on the town board, because they are the mechanism that the state sees directly for a lot of funding resources, for example. So the county the county legislature and the county executive are critical offices with that regard.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. With anything that you do, one of my favorite sayings is actually, it comes from James Brown. That is, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? So you have to know the lay of the land. You have to know what you are venturing into, right? You don't want to go into anything blind, because as important as identifying and feeling your passion is, you also can't afford to be blinded by it either. And so you definitely need to know the lay of the land, because, again, you're not doing this office by yourself. You're looking to lead a community and make change. So you have to think about, well, who are the other folks who are in elected office with me, right? So, or who would be in elected office with me? Who are the folks I'd be working with on a day-to-day basis, right? So if you are on in the legislative side of things, you're just one vote. You have to have the votes of other folks to support you on those issues that you're passionate about. Party leaders. So do I know, somebody wants to ask the question?
No, I think we're okay.
Okay.
I have one for you. I have one for you at the end of this.
Okay. Party leaders. It's important that in thinking about the office you want to run for and the lay of the land, who are the leaders within my party? And so there's the city party leadership, the county party leadership, and then there are those who are the leaders within the party, but they don't have a title. So you definitely need to identify who those folks are. Queen makers. These are the community leaders that possess convening powers. So these are folks who are maybe heads of, a chamber of commerce or a neighborhood group or a nonprofit, or someone who lives in the community that's just a community resident that doesn't have a particular organizational title but knows everyone and has been in the community for a long time and has those connections. So it's important that you establish connections with those individuals, or if you are currently connected with them, that you strengthen those relationships. I know for me, with my campaign, I have Black captains who had those connections in the community, from the business side to nonprofit to the block, who are those folks who have the ability to convene. Because, again, you may have been doing some great work, but you are taking yourself on the road and trying to bring people in, and so you need it's a full production. And so having those queen makers that who are very, very powerful and have the power to convene, you will definitely need them as you're thinking about the office you're looking to go into. Elections calendar. Again, what is the next race? What's available in your area? You definitely have to run where you live. So that is important. Are you willing to move? I've had that experience personally. So when I ran for city council, I lived maybe like a half a block outside of my district. So I actually moved into my district. I only lived like a half a block outside of it, but that's how important.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I like it. I want to say it was a block. It was literally like 1,000 feet. And so I actually moved, and because that's how. But I've been working in my district since I was like 15. So I knew everybody. Right. So it wasn't like I was just kind of going into it blind. Also, primaries. You definitely want to stay on top of filing dates. That is very important. That's with regards to your campaign financial reports and also petitions. You will definitely get to know folks and other dates that you've declared. Timing. Are you willing to wait?
This is where, before we get into the timing conversation, because I know that's important to a lot of women, is, the should I wait, I've been told to wait. But I want you to tell your primary story, because one of the things we know is going to happen is that every guy who's 36 with a college education who thinks he can change the world is going to be running in a primary, right? It's just sort of how it happens. So I imagine, and I know I'm hearing this, a little bit, is that there's six guys in the primary with you, right? So you had this experience where you had to run in the primary against the incumbent, and I won't tell all of it, but, this idea of sort of like, it's almost like running two campaigns, but not to be sort of afraid of a primary system, that you can beat, you can beat the incumbent, you can beat the crowd.
Mm-hmm. So really quickly, when I ran the first time, I ran against the sitting council member who was also the city council president, and we had a Democratic primary. And in New York, we have something called fusion voting where you can run on multiple lines. And so I had to run against him in the Democratic primary, which I won by a landslide. We had historic voter turnout, but then I had to run against him again in the general election. When I ran the second time for my re-election, I ran against the same person who had switched parties in the general election. So, again, I think this idea of willing to wait, I know for me, I thought I was too young. There weren't other women of color, most certainly in my position or other positions within elected office. I knew of the financial challenges that, because I worked on campaigns at the local, state, and federal level. And I was thinking, well, I was a community organizer, so there are other ways to be effective. But you just have to jump in. but you don't have to jump in blind. I want to make that very clear because the goal is to win. And so you have to jump in, but you have to take that risk. And I realized as the campaign moved on and the work I was able and things I was able to accomplish with so many people, if I hadn't taken that step, if I didn't have the support of my family and my friends and the community, the changes that we've been able to make and still are trying to make wouldn't have happened. And so that's been one of my greatest joys, to be quite honest, is taking that community organizing background and bringing it into the halls of the city and the community.
Thank you.
No problem. So other things you may want to consider, right? Because, again, you are still a person at the end of the day, regardless of the office, but you're not by yourself. You have a whole life outside of being in elected office. So questions you may want to ask yourself is, does this particular office, how would it fit my life? How does it happen? So, for instance, how often do they meet? Now, when I was on city council, we met as a legislative body 4 times a month, but I went to community meetings on a bi-weekly basis. We had committee meetings within council, so we met more than just the 4 times. I had more than just 4 meetings a month as a city council representative, and with anything, whether it's the city, local, or city, county, state, federal level, the office will be what you put into it. So if you really want change, you're going to be busy. If you just want to go along with the status quo, you may not be as engaged. And I imagine with folks on this webinar, they're not with the status quo mentality, so I don't need to preach on that. How are their meetings run? And for how long? How do I want my position to operate? This goes back to the question about what value do you bring? How do you want the position to move? Do you want this to be a position where you just only have a few meetings a month? Do you have liaisons? Do you establish liaisons? That was something I did because we didn't have staff in my office. I didn't have a staff. It was just me. And so I relied upon my block captains, even after I was in office, to keep me in the loop with different issues that were happening. Am I willing to travel? As I said earlier, you definitely want to travel with regards to sharpening your skill set as an elected leader. And there are a number of organizations like Outrun that have resources to help you as you are in elected office. Also, Young Elected Officials Network, which I'm a part of, as well, to provide you with training. There's a number of organizations, the National League of Cities. There's a number of organizations that provide professional development training for you in your respective elected office, even school board, all the way up to state, federal. What changes do I need to make in my life to make this work for me? This requires a lot of sacrifice. I mean, you're talking about being a servant leader and being a public servant, right? And so I didn't say servitude or indentured servitude. You are a public servant, right? So you need to think about what sacrifices and changes you would need to make in your life in order to make this work for you and those you care about. What if any, is the supplemental income? For a lot of these positions, they don't really pay that much at the local level, but it also depends on the size of the community you're in. So in smaller communities, you may not receive, some elected offices don't receive pay, or they receive a very small stipend. So a lot of folks have to have full-time jobs if those positions are part-time. So what are the ways in which I have to have supplemental income? How can this advance other areas of my life? I will say that being in an elected office gives you the power to convene. You have the power of the letterhead. And so you have the ability to put people together from a variety of places who may not have ever worked together, but you created the space for them to come together. And that is a skill set that is transferable whether you are in the private sector, public sector, having the ability to convene and bring together stakeholders and be able to recognize who's missing. That is a critical skill set. So that's important as you're thinking about ways to advance your life. There's a lot of professional development that I experienced, and also personal development from being in elected office. you definitely want to go deeper. So competition and open
Yeah, I want to oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, you're fine.
I want to actually. There's a couple. I want to take a moment. It can be after this slide and share with everybody. I think I want to do a little Q&A with you because you have such a deep. Before we go into the tools about networking and mapping, so I just wanted heads up that let's pause on the tools and let's do a little bit of a Q&A because the woman from every app is available to hop on. So let's do the go deeper, and then folks who are listening in, let's get a couple of questions specifically about, we have folks who are like, I'm thinking about the school board. And we have some that are like, what's our first step? So I want to, before we talk about some of the more tech tools, give folks the time to dig into your expertise. So we'll do it after this slide, everyone. So let's send your questions in for Leah specifically in the chat.
Okay, sounds good. So I know my experience was definitely it was a trial by fire in the sense of I was running against the city council president, highly favored candidate within the party, and so the incumbent was not weak in the sense of their position, but with regards to connectivity to what was going on in the community, they weren't that strong. And so what you have to ask yourself, will you go through a primary? And I already shared a little portion of my story with that. Voter turnout. What was the voter turnout in the previous election, and has there been a spike in activism that could swing your race? This was my experience when I ran for city council. So prior to my running for city council, we had less than a 10% voter turnout for a city council election or for a non-mayoral election. And so it was important for me to know that because it gave me a goal. It helped me to envision that, okay, I want to exceed that. I want to make sure that not only am I targeting folks who are prime voters or people who vote all the time, but people who don't vote all the time. What's contributing to the sense of apathy? Why do people feel like that their vote doesn't matter because your vote is your voice? And so how can I convince them that their voice mattered and they need a seat at the table, and I was the candidate that was going to ensure that they had that place not only in the room but at the table. And so when I ran, we had over 20% voter turnout because that was the energy I used going into, because I went into making sure that I wanted to engage folks who didn't vote to come out and vote, and they did in a major way, and that's how I was able to win the first time by a landslide in my primary. How much money is spent? This is always going to be a challenge because that's a larger issue for another phone call, but it's important for you to know that if you're running against someone, or just in terms of how much money that you need to raise, you need to know how much money was raised in your seat of interest on the previous election. For a lot of us, we don't have access to loads of disposable income, and most certainly our families and friends may not. But it's important to think about who are those organizations, who are those folks within my network that I can connect with, but you definitely need to know how much money was raised, so that gives you an idea of what your benchmark needs to be with regards to fundraising. And again, it comes to see who holds that seat now. It's important to understand issues that they've worked on, their connection with the community, polling, how does the community feel? If this is an incumbent that is very popular in the community and you may be running against that incumbent, what are you going to do to distinguish yourself from that person? So I'll pause there because I know Erin said there was some Q&A and also an opportunity for some.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of them, right? So there's two that are sort of coming up. How did you break through? Someone's looking specifically at a county position, but just trying to sort of, races that seem a little bit obscure, or, there's a dog catcher that's an elected race in some cities across the country. Mm-hmm. How do you really break through? And I think some folks have this tug of war between some of the digital tools and some of the old school community organizing tools. What would you say about really breaking through and getting a name recognition?
So I think part of the way in which you do the name recognition is that you have to go into the office being aware of who is moving and operating with regard to that position. What are they doing? What are those media outlets that you have available for you in your community? Now, if you're in a community that doesn't have large, media outlets? What are some of those independent media forms? Social media is a great tool for that, for example. Or are there, like, newspapers? Are there people, right? Remember I said earlier, the queen makers. Who are those folks that have the power to convene that can help you to tell your story and that can convey your authenticity along with you? So whether you're in the room or not, they can say, Leah or Aaron, they are the real deal. They really care, and here's why, and here's how I can tell you. Like, there's, whether you are a fan of old school organizing or new school organizing, the power of, talking to others and word of mouth is critical. And so in order to help you to break through a lot of the, I call those like the little power little circles, so siphoning that happens where you may not even realize that there are other power dynamics going on that preceded you, and that's where having those connections with other people that can help you navigate through those trepidous waters to be able to break through.
Yep, absolutely. And how did you go about finding what the person before you spent on that same campaign? What were some of those steps you took?
So you can go through the Board of Elections because everyone has to do their campaign filing, their financial filings, and it goes through the Board of Elections, and they keep a record of it. So that is a good way to do that. And also you can utilize the Board of Elections to find out how many people voted in the election, how many prime voters, so that you can target. They'll also give you a voter list. So you can set up a voter list to see, okay, so here's the folks who voted in this last election. Those are definitely going to be my first points of contact because they have a vested interest. There are other software programs like VAN. If you don't have access to VAN, voter list from your Board of Elections, they can show who voted on Election Day. You can reach out to them. Those are just a few ways to see how much money was spent. Also, get people involved in your campaign who have worked on other campaigns, right? Part of it is you have to map your network. A lot of times as people, we don't think we know anyone, but we have friends, family, and they have extended networks too. So you have to map that out. You have to see what organizations they're connected to, what other people, and that helps you with thinking about ways to not only raise money, but also building your base to help you navigate through your campaign, whether you're talking about at a local level, state, or federal level.
And then my final question is thinking about, do I have to get ugly, right? So there's going to be quite a few of us, I think, and a lot of Democratic primaries. My assumption is that there's going to be a lot of folks running in Democratic primaries coming up in local races. We have research on the Republican primary side that moderate Republican women are having a really tough time in the primary system. That research comes from a group called Political Parity. So if folks are interested in that, check that out. But I know that you had a tough primary. You switched parties to run against you in the general. Folks tried to run against you again. How did you stay above the fray, and when did you dip in? I know that's one of our barriers in thinking about the office. Is there an incumbent? Sometimes we like to have women tend to go for a more open seat because that feels a little easier. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for me, I always wanted to maintain a level of grace and authenticity because, again, I am not the kind of person that is going to withstand someone bullying me. And I think there's a way for us to be, for myself, I call myself an aggressive diplomat. And that is, I think turning into and participating in negative campaigning where it becomes slanderous is going to be to your detriment because people do not like that. And in fact, it can turn people off because they'll become fatigued and feel like, okay, all I'm seeing is just this slander. Well, what's happening to the issues, right? And so for anyone that's having that experience where you're the person you're running against has decided to engage in negative campaigning, always bring it back to the issues and speak facts. You always have to speak truth to power. It's like, well, it's interesting that my opponent wants to talk about, this aspect or that aspect, but what about the issues that are impacting folks in our community every day? Where do they factor in this equation, right? You can always bring it back and repivot it back to the issues at hand because you have to be mindful of energy vampires. People will suck your energy away from you because that's part of the ways in which politics has that ability to, have people sway in a way that takes them away from the issues at hand, because what you are entering into, you are trying to change the status quo. You are trying to change a system that by design has functioned in a way that creates disparities, right? And so if you're going into it being mindful of that, you also have to be mindful of your place in that microcosm, right, or that ecosystem. How do you be a positive light in a system that has functioned in various moments in time, and most certainly our president is no exception to that, that tries to remove that light out of you?
Thank you. All right.
Great. Yeah. And like I said at the beginning, the position is just the conduit, right? It's the conduit for change. It is not the alpha or the omega, right? You're still a person at the beginning, at the end of the day, and you have to keep that in the forefront of your mind, and to help you keep your energy at its top. And again, you're not by yourself. You have to have a strong support network around you, folks that help you to check the pulse of the community, but also check your pulse to make sure that you're okay. So the next piece we have here, what does winning mean for you? And this is actually a good segue, right? So what does this mean for you? You definitely want to run to win the seek. Like I said, you don't want to run. You're not running blindly. You want to run informed. You're running to change the debate. You're running to change the narrative, to change the. You want to create dialogue, right? Because the way in which the debate is structured is that I'm right and you're wrong, right? And so the challenge is that there's never a space to talk about the solutions that involves everyone. So how do you create dialogue that leads to action and not get lost in acrimony, right? And dialogue creates a space to do that. How are you changing or creating a space for dialogue to happen about those issues that are impacting everyone in your community? Run for name recognition and future success, right? You want to think about how your community will be advanced because you decided to take the risk and run as you are, running as your authentic self. What does that mean for who will come in the position after you? Are you helping to raise the bar, right? I would hope so, right? And so there's a level of name recognition that comes along with that. But like I said at the beginning, with leadership comes great responsibility. And so that name recognition that you will get, you have to cultivate that in a way consistently and intentionally to make sure that you are engaging people in your community to really affect that change in a sustainable way. So I think we reached the portion of the presentation we want to kind of talk through it. I guess we're thinking this is kind of an opportunity for a little homework kind of / hey, let's kind of do like a real-time scenario kind of role play kind of thing here.
Right. Can I be a pain in the butt and pause you? Because we have
Sure.
Genevieve from the Every Election app on. Yeah.
Oh.
So, hey, welcome. Okay, perfect. Great. So we're for folks that are on the line and listening, we're going to hop just a few slides ahead, and then we'll close with some of these examples that Leah has built for us. Because I know a few of you are, and Genevieve, you can't see the chat, but a few folks are sort of frustrated with the lack of information. And I used to tell people there is no grand list where all these elections are located. And then I met this remarkable woman who has been able to join us today, someone unexpectedly. So I want to thank her for that. Genevieve Sayers. Am I saying your last name right? Sayers?
See, you know what? That's great. Sears is usually what people say, but Sears, theirs, it doesn't matter.
Okay. And Genevieve has created the Every Election app where she has been combing the interwebs for all of the information about what elections are happening. They're about to launch in a couple of days. They've been in touch with Vote Run Lead and a couple of the other training groups to say, hey, is this a problem for you? And we find this is our lack of information that around elected officials and offices that you could run for as a real barrier. And so she and her fellow female co-founder, which we love, are making it happen. And it's a joint effort. I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that. And she was able to join us today to share a little bit about the tech side and where you can find a lot of what you need. All right.
Hi, everybody. How you doing?
Great.
So my name's Genevieve, and thank you, Erin. First of all, I wanted to say I'm so impressed with every single one of you, and thank you so much for doing this. I actually come from the tech world, so 16 years ago I founded SitterCity.com. Do you guys know SitterCity? Yeah. So we now have 10 million users internationally, but it's been such a great journey. SitterCity actually put caregivers online. So we kind of took the model of Match.com and Monster.com and sort of applied it to childcare. So I'm very familiar with the tech world, and, you know, like everybody here, I think when Trump won, I thought, oh, God, you know, I'm a huge feminist. So I just wanted to let you know that so many women have your back. We are so excited to see you run, and run as you are. Not a single one of us doesn't have something where, you know, we know that somebody's going to come yelling and screaming at us, but it's your job to just not care. You are all awesome. So anyway, what I wanted to tell you was there's a lot of us on the builder front backing you up as you run to try and make the process of running, along with wonderful Outrun lead who's been a partner to us in what we're doing, to try and make this process of running easier. And as Erin said, there actually literally has not been to date, and this is just a travesty to be honest, I only found this out 6 months ago, there hasn't been a database of elections and elected officials in the U.S., which is a massive oversight, and the DNC really should have done this 10 years ago. But I think, you know, they haven't traditionally been very tech-savvy, and so when Trump won, the good news was that a lot of women, first of all, came out of the gate very angry and wanted to change, but also a lot of tech people like me put our heads up and said, oh, my God, we've got to fix this now. So about 6 months ago, I came out of the gate with a team of 5, fellow co-founder Ellie. She's awesome. We're kind of like the Faye and Polar of the political tech world. And we basically decided we were going to talk to every data company in the country, and we were going to put together this database of elections and elected officials with those companies. So we talked to 8 companies. We had 1 million conversations. We ended up working with 3 of them directly, Ballot Ready, which is also 2 amazing female founders, by the way. We also ended up working with TurboVote and TargetSmart, and we snapped together a massive database, and it's not every election in the U.S., but it's about 66% of them, which, to give you an idea, that's absolutely extraordinary. That's about 300,000 elections that we managed to get into one place. Now, there are about 520,000 elections in the U.S. altogether when you count federal, state, city, and local levels, but we managed to, we have to go top down, so we managed to get all federal, all state, all city, pretty much all city, I'd say 82% of city, and then we've got like something like 50% of the locals. And so we are working to complete the database. We will complete the database. But the fact that this didn't even exist and that we've gotten to where we are in 6 months is already still great. So what we did with this data set is we built an API on top of it, and we've turned it into an app. And the app is wonderful. It's got 10 major partners, including Outrun Lead, and also Indivisible, Swing Left, Ballot Ready, Flippable. You know, these are all also partners that have built this with us. And the Every Election app is simple. You head into the app. It went into the App Store 2 days ago, so it will be available come Wednesday forwards of next week, and it's free. And you just download it, and you put in your address, and it instantly shows you all the elections coming up in your area. Something wonderful that we added in as well as kind of a fun extra is that you can also upload your social network and your address book into it, and then you can also see the elections coming up near your friends and family, and you can badger them to vote too. We built in sort of a one-click mechanism where you can easily bulk text or email them to vote. So this is the first step that we have taken towards utilizing this amazing data set of elections and elected officials in the U.S. And please do get the app because it's wonderful. It has every single piece of information you would need on the election. It has the incumbent, it has the challengers, it has the date of the election, the title of the election, it has early voting deadlines, and it has a link to the polling place, as well as a map, so you can instantly Google Map walking directions to the polling place. So our goal is to make voting simple for the average person. What is coming next, though, Erin, I just met your wonderful partner, Amanda, in San Francisco, and we were talking about this, is that we would like to move further and build a tool that actually allows candidates to just come to this tool. It's like a website probably, enter your address, and see where to run around you. So the Every Election app is great, and it has a lot of great information in it, but that's mainly for people to get them to go out and just vote. We are next building a tool that is very simple. You just go as a candidate and enter your information, and you can see where to run. It'll just pop up all the offices around you, and we're probably going to be able to include the filing deadline, which is very important, I know. So all this is coming. I was kind of shocked to find out it didn't exist, but that was great in terms of opportunity. And please do look up New Founders as well. We came out of the gate as Rise. So Rise, New Founders were the same thing, but we have a huge conference that Vote Run Lead will be speaking at alongside us and many, many other activist groups on October 18th at the UIC Forum in Chicago. And if you can come, we have a huge photo shoot of all the new leaders of the center left, so we can toss you in. We would love to have you. I would like this picture to be a slap in the face of Trump's white men photos. I would like over half of this to be women and as diverse as possible. I mean, we are the next generation. So, Erin, is that good? Can I answer questions?
That's great. Okay. We just have a lot of questions about Android. Yeah. When is the Android? Which I know you use it all the time.
So here's what we did. We had to start somewhere, so we started with iPhone,
right.
But we also built a web version. And the web version, right. So what you might want to do is head to newfounders.us. That's our website. So www.newfounders.us. And or you can head to newfoundersconference.com, which is probably easier to do that. Give us your email. Then you'll be included on all of our emails that show you when the Android release is. That's going to be a couple months away. We are developing for Android, but we decided to start first with an iPhone app and also with a web version. So if you have the Android, you can use the web version, which I believe is a week after the iPhone app. So just get on the email list so you can see the updates. And probably newfoundersconference.com is the easiest place because the email collection module is right at the top. But yeah, we have that coming. And also, I'm not exactly sure of the date either where we've got the tool that's specifically for candidates to see where to run. I suspect that's coming either Q4 of this year or probably Q1 of next year, but it is in development and we will have it soon. So, at the very least, it's not solved yet, but it's on the way.
Thank you so much, Genevieve. We are so grateful for you hopping on and doing this somewhat last minute, and you're getting lots of positive feedback in our chat. So thank you again, and check out the riseparty.org is one. Their dashboard is there, the New Founders Conference, and we will put all of this in the links, and we will also put it in our follow-up email that everybody on this conversation and who signed up will get. So thanks again,
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
And we're all rooting for you. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Great. Awesome. I'm so glad you could be a part of that.
Yeah, I would love to have that.
Yeah, I would. Absolutely.
Technology.
And I wanted to include her. Yeah. And so you may or may not be finding it. Wednesday is the release. It's coming out it looks like it's in the store for some people, but not fully for the App Store, coming out Wednesday. But again, Ballot Ready is another one. This is called Every Election App. And, I would suggest Mark is working hard to find the right links, and he'll send them to you on the chat. I also have to say that Vote Run Lead is a nonpartisan organization. We trust women to believe and build their own agendas. I think right now it's a little bit sad that women's rights have to land on the left, but that's something that we are all working hard towards and looking for a diversity of perspective. So I know Genevieve shared a little bit about some sort of partisan reactions, but this is a tool that is for every American, for every citizen, and so help them spread the word about it. More information about our elections will bring more folks to the table. All right, so I'm going to bring you back to the right slide that you were at, which is sort of also what Genevieve shared about just sort of taking the leap and making it happen.
Mm-hmm. So, again, as we're, the title of this whole presentation is, Run As You Are. And so I know I've seen some comments where folks, I know I've given you a lot of, my own experiences, but, anyone that knows me knows I have to be very genuine and upfront. So I definitely want you to go into this informed, but go into it. Thinking about why you're running, you have to take the leap with anything, unless you're thinking of doing not just elected office. With anything, you are going to have to take a risk. And so I think it's important that in thinking about it, you always are staying in tune with yourself and being aware of the why. Again, you know what you care about and why you care about it. But the question is, how do you create a space for others to be as passionate, but also for you to connect on those other issues that, again, that are designed in mind to move the needle, really create change. The when, what races are coming up. Again, this is a part of you taking a leap, but also being informed and being mindful. What are those elections that are coming up? Some offices have their elections on odd years, some on even years. So it's important for you to know when the races are coming up so you can prepare. And then the where, thinking about which office you want to run for. You may be, vacillating between a statewide office or a federal office or a local office, right? So you want to narrow it down. And again, this is so important. You are the change your community has been waiting for. And that was something that, from my own experience, where at first I worked on campaigns, and so I didn't think I had to be the person out front, but I had numerous of folks who came to me and said, no, this is right for you. You need to do this. And so, to this day, it's one of the decisions I made that I've been very grateful for, that I took a risk, but I didn't jump off the cliff by myself. I had an anchor, or two or three or four, and a safety net, which helped. So I didn't, crash and burn. So the other thing we wanted to do, I wanted to give you some examples of women who are currently running for office or who have just run and won their seat, who are running as they are. So just to give you a little, light at the end of the tunnel, if you're feeling like, oh, this is too much, or I don't have the right, aptitude for it, or attitude, or this is too much. So Haley Stevens, she is running for Congress in Detroit, Michigan, and she has no experience in regards to being in elected office. She actually is running for Congress right now as we speak. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Haley a few weeks ago, and she's running in for a pretty tough seat with an incumbent that is very, very well funded. In Haley's background, she has done some work at the federal level. She was a part of President Obama's auto task force that actually oversaw the financial bailout of Chrysler and General Motors. And so she was one of the key partners on that effort and has done a lot of work around the auto industry and technology and design. And, she's throwing her hat in the ring. against a very well-funded incumbent, and she's running for Congress right now. Lovely Warren, she is the current mayor of Rochester. Rochester is a large city in upstate New York, and there's several colleges. And she ran back in 2013, and she is the first female mayor in the city in its history, and the only second African American ever to hold that seat in that city's history. And she's actually currently running for re-election as we speak. Now, Christine Pellegrino, she just had a special election last month, I believe, here in New York. So she actually ran in a very tough election that
crowded.
No one thought that she would have a chance to win. It was a pretty Republican-dominated seat out in Long Island, and she, and also just to give a little more context, Trump won this particular district by 60% of the vote, and she ran a special election, and she won with about, I think it's 58% of the vote.
Wow.
In a very Republican district. So, and her election was just last month, and she was just sworn in, I think, like a week or so ago. And Marita Garrett, I know Marita, we're both a part of the elected officials network that I mentioned earlier, and she was on city council in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, which is right, it's part of Pittsburgh, in outskirts, and she just won her Democratic primary, and she had a four-way race for her election. So Maria ran against three other male challengers, and she won 64% of the vote in the Democratic primary for mayor, and her general election is in November. So these are just a few examples of women who are running as they are. They are either running against incumbents, or the incumbents are in tough districts, have multiple opponents, but that hasn't stopped them from taking the leap and running as they are, and they're making history right now as we speak. So hopefully that provides you with some additional motivation and inspiration to really, throw your hat into the ring and help continue to make change in your community. So tools, the idea with this is keep the old and work the new, right? There's a place for both, and you have to create that space. So I mentioned this earlier. A lot of times when you're thinking about running for office or just, putting yourself out there, people may feel like I don't really know that many folks, or, I don't have enough experience in politics or an election to even think about running for office. But you have to start with yourself and mapping your connections. Think about all the roles that you have. And I mentioned this earlier in the conversation that we all have a variety of roles that we play in our daily lives, right? Whether you're a part of an organization, whether it's Centers of Faith, whether you are part of the university, you're an alum, you're the director. There's a number of positions and roles that you have. And so it's important that you map that out. What are some of those roles that I play? I'm a sister, and I actually happen to be a sister, and I have a lot of, I have a number of siblings. But who do they have connections to? Who are their friends? And who are their friends' friends, right? And who are they connected to? Who do they work for? Can they talk to coworkers, right? This image here kind of gives you an idea. You know how with the commercial where it has, your network, and then they do a flash, and you see like millions of people behind you? Yes, once you start to map out your connections, you will begin to see this image that you see on the screen here, that your connections have connections. You just have to map it. So again, think about all those individuals and organizations that you come in contact with regards to those roles that you play. Within every organization, it's important to identify subgroups within the organization. So if you are connecting with, your Chamber of Commerce, if you are connecting with a nonprofit, right, they have subcommittees that do work on a number of those issues. So who are some of those groups, and who are the leaders within those groups, and who do they have connections to? Also, for every individual, think about and research other connections that they may have to other communities and groups. Again, these connections don't have to be solely relegated within your city or your community. They can be from outside of your community, too, where people you have connections with or your people have connections with to bring in to assist you in your journey. I know we talked about the technology. Maya Angelou is one of my favorite human beings. So I wanted to include this because I think it's important. Just going back to what we said at the beginning, all of this, you know, your passion, the issues you're passionate about, your concerns, it starts with you. And I really love this quote because it speaks to whether you're thinking about running for office, whether you are wanting to become, you know, whatever your desire is to make change. I think Dr. Maya Angelou says it best, and that is whatever you want to do, if you want to be great at it, you have to love it and be able to make sacrifices for it. I think that is so important. So, yeah, we'll just pause there and I guess open to more questions, Aaron? Or next step.
Sure, we've got a few minutes. We do have a few minutes for questions. I'm going to ask Leah to hop into the chat, and so if you have a specific question for Leah, put it there while I tell you sort of what's next, because I know there's a lot of new folks on today's class with a lot of great questions. So this is just the beginning. These primers, these web classes, like they are supposed to make you go, okay, what do I do next? Where do I find that information? What's happening, right? Hopefully you've had a pen and paper next to you and you're writing down some of what those questions are. This is available to you. Not only the deck will be able to download, but this recording and session. And so for some of you, I noticed that like the questions that were happening in the chat were exactly what Leah was talking about. So make sure we go back and, you know, next time we're doing the laundry or vacuuming my apartment, you know, I find it helpful to go back and listen to some of these. So take that moment to go back next week and get a refresher on what's been said. Joining the Facebook alumni group, we'll send you all of these links in an email. You'll get an email for us that has a survey in it as well. We really need you to fill out that survey because, of course, it helps with donors, and most importantly, it helps us to improve. We have a big resource library, not only of these, but we have ones that are specifically about, you know, the state senate. What does the state senate do? What are my first steps? The school board. What does the school board actually get to legislate on? Those are called the ins and outs of local government. They can be found under voterumney.org Learn and our VRL replay. And then, of course, we want you to sign up for the next one. Not only taking a look at the past classes, but looking at the next one. And then, if you're interested in having Vote Run Lead come to you, on the bottom of our homepage, we are probably for about a week more going to be asking folks if they want us to come to their community. So that's on the bottom of our homepage. So check that out. And if you're selected, you'll get a little form to fill out some more info about how we can make that happen. For some of the questions, I'm going to really recommend the session called This is How You Run for Office. It's the one with Stephanie Sawyer-Clayton and Ilhan Omar. That's a fantastic primer that really answers some of the more basic questions that, about just getting started. How do you just get out of the gate, right? Where do you do that research? And you heard Leah say some really core things. Number one is running for office is because you care about making change. So what is important to you? We've got a worksheet on our website that talks about how to actually go through some of these issues. Write it down, get it out of your head, learn how to articulate that, right? What are the three things that you care about? What are the three things that your constituent cares about? And Leah talks a lot about making that come together. Asking people what they care about is the first thing, right? Number two, we want to make sure that there is an office for you to run for. So you can only run where you live. Yes, are you willing to move? No, you're not. Okay, so where do you live? Who represents you? Whoever represents you is a seat that you can run for. And the third thing that we covered was Leah talking about, and Genevieve, talking about technology and your networks, right? So your tools, you can, of course, Google is great, but you've got to get outside of the computer and go take a meeting. Take a meeting with your local party chair. Who are the people in your network? Take a minute to do that mapping, spend 30 minutes to do that mapping, and you would be surprised at how big your networks are. And so that's something to just, figure out who's in your network. A couple of you I saw sent an email out to your party folks. That's great. And, it's that combination of technology and tools, and you see some of the new tech coming out with the Every Election app. And so we're ending like right on time, right at right at 2:30 as we promised, so that's fantastic. The slides will come to you again in the next couple of days. You'll get an email from Vote Run Lead that has the link to where these are. On the page, you'll see the deck, you'll see an opportunity for a coaching session, and you will actually get this recorded video. So join me from wherever you are, in your couch, in a coffee shop, in giving Leah a big round of applause, and for taking time out of her busy Saturday to make it happen with us. And you can stay connected to Leah. She does her own consulting as well. I'm a big fan, a big endorser of her work, particularly if you're in New York State. All right. So we'll leave the chat open for the next few minutes. Oh, go ahead, Leah.
Yes. I was just going to say that thank you again, Aaron, and the whole Vote Run Lead team for doing this. You know, I think that you know, our time is now. Our community is now more than ever with all the tragedies that are happening on a day-to-day basis. We just need to step up and really speak truth to power and really commit to making the change and bringing other people forward. And so this is a personal passion of mine. Even if I had never ran for elected office, I would still be one of the folks on the as an organizer pushing you to run. So, you know, as Genevieve said, you know, we're with you. I'm with you. Aaron and the whole team is with you. We definitely want to support you in being a change agent in your community. So if you haven't decided to run, I hope by the end of this you decide to run. And if you're currently running, stay the course. No matter what gets thrown at you, and it will get thrown at you, just know that you are operating with a purpose, and that's all you need. And you got people around you that will help keep you grounded. You have to take care of yourself and just be that conduit for change.
Thanks, Leah.
Yeah. And then we have a couple of minutes. I've been trying to you know, put responses in the chat feed, but again, I know we've given you a lot of information, and Erin already spoke to that she's going to have all this available for you. Please feel free to contact me as well. Like I said, definitely can speak from my own experience, and you know, again, please stay connected with Vote Run Lead. They have been a tremendous partner to me. Very appreciative of my connection with Vote Run Lead now. Well, next year, it's been 9 years. 9 years that I've been a part of this family that's growing, and it truly has been a great relationship. So please stay connected. Also connect with other folks who have been posting in the chat. You know, it's important to stay connected. This is a massive network. There's a whole Facebook group. You know, join that and just, you know, communicate with each other and just support each other, offering, you know, words of encouragement. It'll definitely pull you through those tough times and also remind you of why you're doing it once you are successful in achieving the office you want to run for.
Thank you. And I didn't pay her to say all that.
Good luck, everybody, and you know,
good luck, everyone.
Take your names. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.